We're gonna be reacting to CashJordan. He's a white supremacist propagandist. Mamdani bans home ownership, then New York City middle class implodes. This man baits a lot of people that he sees as an inferior race or an inferior class of which he gets to critique and make thousands of dollars off of in order to get himself a better perspective on what he believes is a better person. And now we're going to see exactly how he utilizes this ideology in order to push the white supremacist agenda.
In what New Yorkers have to say about our policies, and 93% approve. This is a tax that will raise $500 million every year.
So, you heard it right there. New Yorkers are totally on board with voting for other people's money. And while America reacted with shock to New York's radical new plan to punish property owners on tax day, the mayor says this will help make the city more affordable and expand access to housing, even though, as you're about to see, this is just another ban on private property designed to impoverish us all.
New York City real estate brokers blasting Governor Kathy Hochul for her new proposed tax in the Big Apple, which would put an annual surcharge on homes serving as a second property. City Mayor Mamdani couldn't be happier about it. Watch.
And it will raise money to fund essential city services like free childcare, cleaner streets, and safer neighborhoods. I've made it clear to the public that I am deeply supportive of taxing the rich.
Those who benefit from the city without living in a full-time capacity should contribute to the costs that it takes to run the city.
So you've got someone who spends $5 million or more, does not really use the place, but still pays maintenance, so supporting employees in the building, and property tax, but doesn't put any burden on the city's services whatsoever. How stupid a tax is this?
They're going to take their money someplace else. And that means some carpenter's not going to get a job. Some plumber's not going to get a job. The restaurants in the neighborhood are going to lose business.
If those people reach the oh crap level or whatever, what happens? The exodus will keep going on. And we don't want the exodus to go on.
Wait a second.
So while the mayor talks about increasing fees to fund things that are going to make life affordable, look at these free grocery stores. Ain't nothing affordable about this. And what nobody's talking about is if the government's goal is to take more and more of other people's money, it's them who are causing the unaffordability crisis in places like.
Notice how he starts off by saying it's the people that which are trying to help the poor that are the issue, but not the people that have been there before and which are enacting the hatred and the white supremacy and the division of segregationist policies that are being pushed and enacted by the capitalist class. You see, with these people here, and you'll start to notice a different of tone of oppression in which they are seeing are the true oppressed people with his blue eyes and white skin. You're going to start to realize that a lot of the people he judges and subjugates to this poverty and says you should know better and you should make your own money are the people of which people like him are pushing down continuously in order to look down on them. And because of this, you'll see, of course, the divide of wealth, the wealth disparity that is, and then they'll utilize that to say that they're robbing this country dry, but they'll never say they robbed the country dry when they took advantage of the black neighborhoods or brown neighborhoods. They never say they took advantage when they took advantage of the Latino or the Muslim. They'll never say they took advantage when they see a bunch of impoverished African Americans. They'll just blame a bunch of third world countries and a bunch of immigration policies because they want to say the N-word without saying the N-word in order to feel a superiority over these people of which they look down upon. This is why this white supremacist is a propagandist for the talking points that helped enact the segregationist policies here in America.
New York. And that's what's happening here again with this new tax on $1 million homes. Now, sure, to average folk like me and you, somebody worth hundreds of millions or even billions can spare a few extra bucks, sure, but that's not the point, because it's not just the rich who are about to pay a price for communism here. Once you start punishing an industry, no matter what industry it is, there are a lot of people affected. Who do you think builds and maintains those luxury homes, you think?
White people. See, the issue here is he doesn't realize that the ideology of which he is espousing, which he does know, he is just lying about it, his ignorance is weaponized against the people of color. So he says that when you punish the capitalist owner, the slave owner, the master, the people that suffer are the slaves because they are the ones that are going to get whipped from the policies. So when you punish the slave owner, you punish the white supremacists. The only people that are suffering are the people that are enslaved. And the reason for that is that you don't adequately judge or blame the people of which have the income or the money, which are the rich and the established and the slave owner, the Uncle Tom. He ends up going to shift the blame off into the poverty, into the impoverished lands, which are wealth despaired. And you can see this with the statistics proving that it's always the Latino and African American. It is the black and brown. And then they're going to try and virtue signal to another race we ignored in order to prevent us, from the people, from acknowledging that it is a majority black and brown impoverished nation. And the same hatred of which they put in onto us to enact onto our people is the same hatred that they're going to use against the Asian, against the Muslim, against the Indians, against the Asians, of which are East and West, and they'll divide that as well. They'll tell you that you are and are not welcome in dependence of your validation of their loyal system, of which is toward white supremacy. And exploitative means that it takes advantage of the fact that they use class privileges, because if they use that too continuously, you're going to start to see that when the people of which are black and brown, start to address the socialist system, that system calls it a class war in order to avoid the racial issues here in America. That of which is being proven with the gerrymandering here to avoid the voter bases of black and brown. They want to take away your rights because they can't take away the civil rights. They'll take away the rights in your districts in order to make it less viable and less credible as a statistic they can use and work off of. He is pushing the ridiculous nature with his over-exemplified expressions and his loud demeanor in order to push this white supremacist identity politics onto the black and brown, to guilt them into saying you're hurting the rich, which just hurts you. You hurt the master and you hurt the slave. You make the master upset, and when they whip you, it's your fault instead of the master. This is the obligation that a lot of these white ethno-states and these white supremacists use in order to utilize the oppressive measures on the black and brown. This is a white supremacist propagandist.
That's a bunch of rich people too. Those are regular New Yorkers. And while everybody in this city seems to think taxing people who make more than they do is a great plan, what they don't understand is that if you start punishing people, nobody's gonna buy real estate. And if people stop buying, people stop building, people stop eating out at restaurants, and there go the jobs. And the real reason this is gonna be another blue state unaffordability nightmare initiative is because every time you jack up taxes on anything, you decrease opportunity, because it's the government that's taking its cut of what people use to provide for themselves. And at the exact same time, we're told that having an unoccupied home decreases access to housing for average people, which is 100% true, but there's a problem. These $200 million penthouse apartments were never intended to be sold to people who didn't have $200 million. Meanwhile, the city of New York sits on 6,000 vacant apartments right now in its own public housing complexes and regulates many more out of existence completely, which could be relatively affordable places if the landlords were allowed to charge rent that would balance out the cost of renovating them. And the dirty little secret about all of this affordability talk is that while the city here says that's what it wants, as you're about to see, this is completely the opposite of what it is subjecting all of us to.
No light here, Armando? No. This is the living room. This is the kitchen.
So there you have a government-regulated New York City apartment, which is inside a building somebody else owns. And guess what? It has a legal rent capped at under $1,000 a month, yet it's gonna cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to repair, which means nobody's ever gonna be able to live in this place because nobody can afford to fix it because nobody wants to throw away $100,000. But those are our laws, and the same people championing new laws think every single empty apartment is such a horrible thing that people should be punished for it. Watch this.
This pied-à-terre tax is specifically designed for the richest of the rich, those who store their wealth in New York City real estate, but who don't actually live here. But even so, they're able to reap the huge financial rewards of owning property in, dare I say, the greatest city in the world. And most of the time, these units are sitting empty, since again, they don't actually live here. This is a fundamentally unfair system that hurts working New Yorkers. Now, it's coming to an end.
But notice how the mayor did not say how this is going to hurt working New Yorkers. Working New Yorkers are the ones who are going to suffer because they can't renovate and build apartments that people want to spend hundreds.
So he thinks in his ideology that the working class are real estate owners that are being hurt by his administration, which is then enacting more affordable places toward the real working class, the ones that work the jobs like construction or any other working class job like cashiers or grocery baggers or warehouse workers, that he thinks that the working class is so rich they can put down payments on hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of property, instead of seeing the real issue that those are people with affordable losses that they can construct and build and renovate these places and be able to work with the government in order to work an actual deal of affordability, because these people are being overcharged for their places. And the reason they can't afford over 1,000 on rent caps is because the local area does not pay them an adequate minimum wage. They don't pay them livable wages. They have multimillionaires paying their workers lesser and lesser so that they can profit the difference. And then they utilize that oppressive measure, that desperation, to tell you, if you side with anyone that dares tell me that I cannot raise the rent in order to exploit you further, that you are the oppressor of the slave master. And now they are so entitled, they are so filled with themselves, that they are telling themselves that they are not real working class people, they are migrants or illegals, rather than the American public that is the majority, up to 60 and 70% live paycheck to paycheck, that you are entitled while they are sitting in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of property, saying they are being oppressed because they can't raise the rent on the impoverished poor, that if you owned a business, you have the right to pay the lowest wage and tell them, go somewhere else, boy. Where else are you going to find these wages? And then they're going to utilize that again to push you down. They push you down in your workplace, tell you where you're going to find a better job than this. Then they take advantage of your housing, say where you're going to find a better place to live than this. And then they utilize your desperation to threaten you with the sale of slave ownership. You do as I say, you get paid what you want, and you don't complain. You come back to the place where I overcharge you because I'm a double dip. I own the business and then I own the workplace. And then I'll call myself the working class because I afforded you the job so you could work. It is slave owner. It is a slave owner mindset of this white supremacist, and he's going around shopping for houses as though he is the impoverished poor. He calls himself the working class while he's buying property. They think that the wealthiest people in society earn their wealth by working hard, and then utilize their hard work that they claim they worked hard with to make work harder for the people to get to where they are. They create an exclusive ideology, one of which is whites only, and pushes out the black and brown, and then purchases anyone that's impoverished to bring them up to the higher class by granting them access to opportunity, resources, and loans, or money, in order to give them access to being one of the fake working class, which is the rich, entitled white supremacist class with their pets and tokens and slave ownership. It's a slave plantation. It's an ideology of pushing people down and then playing victim at the top. And then when you see a real victim, you say you're the one playing victim. And then when you see a real oppressed person, you say you need to work harder because I'm the oppressed person having to deal with you being poor. It is, again, we outnumber these people that which rob us of our dignity, rob us of our equality, rob us of our equity, and then they utilize their profound privileges to talk down on us, uplift themselves, and then say they did it themselves with hardly any work. This is the white supremacist ideology. He is a propagandist for the white supremacists.
Millions of dollars on, and they're also suffering because they can't renovate apartments that somebody who comes here and wants to pay rent for like a 1-bedroom would be able to live in. Everybody who works and is trying to make it in this city legally is losing on both the high end and the low end. But as you're about to see, it gets worse.
Is interesting. Let's ask ourselves, without the rhetoric and the politics, does this make sense? So you've got someone who spends $5 million or more, does not really use the place, but still pays maintenance, so supporting employees in the building, and property tax, but doesn't put any burden on the city's services whatsoever. How stupid a tax is this? Because you would want more people doing this.
Right. So the same people who we're told contribute nothing to New York actually contribute millions of dollars a year, and they do it while not standing in line for the soon-to-arrive city-run grocery stores. Aren't those the residents you want? You can tax them and punish them. You already are. And they don't even live here to get any of the money back. They don't even ride the bus. But then this is what real unaffordability looks like. You have a perfectly good apartment right here. Doesn't need work, yes, but no one can be paid to go in here and remove the trash. That costs more than this place is gonna earn. So it stays like this. And don't even get me started on trying to get people in here.
So he just did a mathematical fallacy. It costs more to clean it up than to make money out of it. Is a falsehood because as soon as you clean it up, it's money into your pocket. This is why leaving it empty is an exclusive measure, which they do this with designer bags and clothing. What they utilize is the exclusive nature of which they rob people of a livable place, force them into one that's more expensive, and then tell themselves that they can charge higher for this place, so they leave it impoverished and wrecked, so they can get someone who is more high or rich in order to purchase it, to fix it, in order to make money off it. It's a long-term investment. This is what they do in real estate. Because the math is off. You charge $1,000 or less, just barely, to clean this place, and then you make 1,000 in that month. You leave it empty and you make zero. Nothing. Therefore, the mathematics does not add up. You can clean this place out because, again, it's just a janitor place. You make it livable, of which is very easy to do. And if you have a large impoverished nation, someone's going to live there. Someone's going to want to live in this place. The reason for that and the proof of this is that they leave it empty in order to make videos like this, like advertisement, in order to sell, like purchasing a bunch of sympathy from the richest people to say, look what they're doing, instead of rather giving us free money from the government in order to clean this up, to put a poor person in there, so they don't only just not pay for the cleaning, but they profit off of their very living that they are therein. They're openly saying, and he snitched on himself, that he would rather have this place empty because it'll cost more to fix it than it would be to rent it out and clean it, which is a falsehood. You put a line graph and you say over time in 10 years, would you rather have an empty apartment space or invest to fix it and gain profits, and let's say in his ridiculous nature, 15 years make profit? Well, if you don't clean it in that 10-year span, in 15 years you are still making no money. This ideology of which he sells is a white supremacist victimhood. They make propaganda. They look at some hoarder's X place or some place of which is run down. They say this is every apartment in America and New York and any other places which wants affordable housing. The people who make millions and millions of dollars for doing nothing at all because the maintenance of that place is only on the mandatory basis and it is up to the upkeep of the people that are renting it in order to keep it clean. Those people are now going to be blamed for the which of why they cannot afford to rent it out to another, just so they can have other apartment complexes that are luxury, that are high class, that they can profit off of continuously. It's a mathematical fallacy. You add to the equation, regardless of how long of time over time it makes. You can make a graph out of this. Real estate owners do this all the time. That's why good real estate owners that are billionaires usually fix up everything. And the ones that have excess cash but are extremely exploitative will not repair a damn thing, because they want to play victim in order to make more money off of what they deem themselves as worthy as, which is greed. It's exploitative. That's why they're waiting to repair this when it's a better situation, when they can exploit the cleaners. Either the wages drop so they'll clean it for less, or the wages of which go so high up that they charge a huge amount that they fix it like that instantly, fix it all up for the cost so that the rent can outprice the cleaning cost. That's why they are exploiting you. They are pushing you down to the lowest levels of which is gonna be, according to statistics, black or brown people, the slave class. Utilize that victimhood that they put onto the white man, which is him and his buddies, and then utilize that as a way to extort you, either that your wages drop so much so that the cleaning and renovations cost less, or that they increase so much of your wages that you are forced to buy this place because it's finally affordable, and which they will increase the crisis of housing so that price goes up and inflates again and you have yourself a bubble, and which they will exploit you again. Take your money either by work or by housing, and they'll utilize you like a slave, which you are a slave, in order to attack you and say you should pay more and be grateful, boy. And if you don't, they'll re-navigate the hatred toward an immigrant or an illegal that doesn't come from there. Make fun of the poor people they have made artificially by raising wages or cutting them off, in order to either make it so high wage they are specifically picking out the white educated class or the rich resource token slave, and then utilize that in order to make a huge impoverished homeless class, which is the slaves who did not obey their master. Which back in the day you would check for the slave lashings on their back, but now today you check in accordance to their homeless status or not. This is the white supremacist modernization of white supremacy. And this takes an educated perspective, which of course has gotten me death threats, has gotten me told that I should quit what I'm doing. But this is the white supremacist way of operation, which unites all people together against the white supremacist who oppresses us in the same measure. They oppress us because we are not white. We are not Christian, Protestant, straight men of honorable respect according to the perspective of these white, entitled, greedy white men. It is a white supremacist takeover, and it is a race war in accordance to the gerrymandering, which is putting down black and brown people.
Here to fix the place after you remove all of the garbage. We're looking at a place that's got 2 bedrooms, could be used for a family, but nope, nobody's going to use this place. Apparently, the tenant was here for 40 years, but New York's laws that we have today mean for the next 40 years, it's going to sit in this same state. This is sad. This is communist unaffordability right here, because it's all based on the idea that whoever owns this place is making too much money, and they need to be punished just like whoever owns $200 million penthouse. Never.
You see how he re-navigated that away from 40 years that someone was living there, to which now he called it communist, which, if you look at the root of which communism was hated for, was not for the class struggle against the poor, but rather that black and brown people were being given the resources rather than the white people. Because the most impoverished people of our society are black and brown. No one hates communism, they hate black and brown people that use it for their benefit. That's why they're trying to replace the N-word with communism. This is why white liberals use socialism to tell us to know our place. Meanwhile, they help their white friends and their white working class people, which he calls himself working class, as he says he cannot afford houses to buy and renovate, because he is one of which has more access and resource that he believes the white working class should be able to buy houses and flip them. This is again white supremacy, and white socialism teaches you this because it's the white liberal that utilizes socialism in order to make it a class issue rather than a racial one. We are oppressed because we are not white. We are oppressed because we practice a culture different than the Christian Protestant. They don't hate us because we're communists. They hate us because we are black and brown. This is why they make fun of DEI. You can have a degree, you can have an education, but you're still a brown or black person. This is why they avoid the racial discussion a lot of the time, because they get ridiculed and death threatened until they fall in line the same way intimidation, threats, slander, defamation from the KKK and the white supremacists will utilize that in order to attack you. They are pushing the same agenda. They do not hate you because you are a socialist. They hate you because you are black or brown. If you are a white person, you are stealing even the credit of victimhood in order to make yourself equal to the black and brown, of which of is oppressive measure. But if you fight it in the ideology of actually gaining access to resources, you find out socialism works great for you, but for the black and brown does not work just the same. Because unless that organization understands the racial issue, they are pushing again toward white supremacy, toward the perspective of white people. This is why they push anti-communist rhetoric. This is why they push anti-socialist rhetoric, because they are aiming to help the most impoverished first, which is of course going to be the Latino and African Americans here in America. Which of course we say black and brown because anyone else is going to become a diversion up against what is happening, because this happens to the Asian people, this happens to anyone else that is ethnically different, this happens to the Muslims, which is culturally different, this happens to anyone who is not white Christian Protestant. Then if you are one of the chosen, which they have their chosen like Candace Owens and any other, they will utilize you to purchase you because look at how great you are doing. You did that because you talk down on the Democrat. You talk down on the people of color. Because when the Democrat is a white person, it's relatable and it's someone else just kissing ass. But if it's someone who is black or brown, they are suddenly unqualified. They're suddenly inadequate and incompetent. It is that white supremacist mindset they put into your head. If you look at the Latin American countries, we already have a brown woman president. If you look at the black countries, you already have black leadership that are women. But you look at the white ethno-state here in America and suddenly they're unqualified, they're inadequate, and we look at them as a lesser human being. It is a racial question of which they avoid all the time by saying the real working class is the white man, and if you don't acknowledge the white man, you're anti-white racist. And then they steal the victimhood of which is the real racism of which we face as black and brown, and then they utilize that as saying we are the real oppressed people. A class war is just an all lives matter for the left. That's it. Because if you address the racial issue, you are automatically a socialist communist. You can be a capitalist who addresses the people of color, but suddenly you are someone who has to address the inequalities, the unfair values, and the exploitative measures of capitalism going too far, which is the equivalency of cutting up the oil companies when capitalism had to cut them up due to the monopoly. So then what happens then when you have to address in every situation of political ideology that the black and brown are the oppressed class? They don't hate communism, they don't hate socialism, they don't hate capitalism, they don't hate Christianity, they hate black and brown people. And I promise you they'll pick up this narrative like a template they can use on any other race or any culture that dare stands against them, because at the end of the day, their idea is you are not white. You are not a civilized person. And civilization, they'll even rob that to make it whites only and say it's a coincidence and you're jealous, and the real people, the good ones, understand the concept of civilization better than you do. And then they'll utilize civilization as an excuse. We are more civil. We are more clean. We are more educated and hardworking than your kind, which is just white supremacy. And they'll purchase out any black or brown person who's desperate or anyone who's already privileged enough to understand these concepts, and they'll utilize them for their currency and money to get rich. Now when you talk about this, it's you people complaining. Oh, you people just broke. Oh, you people just want to use black people, when it's them that are using them to begin with. They'll sell you the idea that being racist to each other is more equal and more accepting of an integrative process, rather than going to the black and brown and uplifting them to make them equal in equity so that they can live in an equalized society. They are selling you white supremacy. I promise you that.
Never mind all these people pay property taxes. Never mind all of these people employ others. Nope, that's not good enough.
Those who benefit from the city without living in a full-time capacity should contribute to the costs that it takes to run the city.
And now they have to pay even more. This is going to take what's left of the city's economy and ship that out of state. Just you wait.
But Mayor Mamdani called it a tax.
This is a tax on properties worth more than $5 million that are owned by people who do not reside in New York City.
Both leaders supporting the new pied-à-terre tax. That's the French term for foot on the ground that typically means a place you own but don't live, impacting 13,000 homes in New York City valued at $5 million and above.
Okay, so the reason to tax these 13,000 homes is because we have a housing crisis and no one lives in them. That's the justification. Never mind that these are homes that were not built to solve a housing crisis. These are luxury assets that were legally built by people who had real jobs and got paid good money to construct something that somebody who had more money than you or I will ever see in our lifetimes was going to come along and buy.
You notice how he said real jobs? Because the labor class is not seen as real hard workers, he sees them as bums or lesser than people. To which he even stated earlier that the people that actually make the money will leave. What is that if not when black people move into a white neighborhood, the white people leave because they hate the integration of people who are black or brown, who ain't working for that real money, which is another word for wage slavery, which is just a slave class, which is just another word for black or brown. And they will move out your neighborhood because they'll give you this fake idea that we are equal, but the second you move into their neighborhood, there goes the neighborhood. And then they're moving out to move out of the concepts of black or brown people at all being there. Suddenly our jobs aren't real work. Suddenly our jobs aren't worthy of getting paid good enough to own a house because we are slaves to them. They're upset that people that are so wealthy and privileged that they got given handouts by a bunch of rich socialists in order to get anything they want and give us rugged individualism. And they sell us capitalism in that name. Because it'll be support for the rich and nothing for the poor, and then the poor will be utilized as an exploitative means to which we will turn on each other in order to get access with the master. We'll say the same talking points he gives, and then we'll tell ourselves we're smart because we got a handout, and then that handout gets us our idea of capitalism, which is really just rich socialism for the richest people that he's selling right now by saying stop taxing the rich because they are the ones exploiting us. And they will move out of our neighborhoods, they'll move out of our places that we moved into, and then make that unaffordable for us again, and then create a new ghetto or a hood by exploiting us by our skin color. And he said it there plainly. They are the ones that work the real jobs. So who do you think is there when you look at the wealth disparity and you see white people at the top? Who is working the real jobs? Who is the more qualified people? Because you could get a degree and they'll still judge you for it. They'll say you're not qualified. You used to work a real job, but that real job's not a real job all of a sudden. It's now a waiter job. It's now a warehouse job. So then what do they mean by that other than you are a colored person who thinks you are entitled to our money? They even tried to otherize it outside of New York. because they're trying to ship in people who actually can work these jobs that these entitled white men don't work, because they're being offered 6 to 7 figures working jobs that they do not qualify for, but they tell themselves they do in accordance to what they are able to purchase. They believe that the money is equal to intelligence. So why do you think historically they took away our education, which now they rob us by making it unaffordable education? Why do you think back in the day they hated giving us the right to own land, which they gave us now, which now we cannot afford? Which now they say, why do you think your people are seen as dirty? And they rob us of healthcare to teach us the sanitation and cleanliness through antibiotics that we need to help ourselves, to which to validate the dirty narrative. It is a race war of which is against the black and brown. You ain't working a real job working 2 shifts. That's poor people money. You ain't working it. You ain't really earning it. You got to give your life. That's their mentality, but as a white man, you do that. You make triple or quadruple the money of which a black or brown will. You tell yourself anything you need to hear to make yourself feel better, because the black and brown are working harder than you, but you get paid more, so you get told that means more. You got purchased as a slave. You got utilized against the others in tokenism. You ain't special. You just got a master. You ain't unique or hardworking. You got a master. That's why you're rich. Pay attention to the statistics, pay attention to the history, and you'll start to see the white supremacists evolve along with the economy, because they will utilize that in order to put themselves at the top. They are selling you slavery, and it has nothing to do with class war. This is a race war. I promise you that. They'll censor you on social media. They'll sell you any trending video that they see. They'll put those to the top in their algorithms, because they don't want to hear that nonsense from black and brown people complaining. They don't want to hear you point out the reality that they didn't earn their money. You can quote them in every single way to make money, and they still think you are unworthy because you must have not just applied yourself. And they'll ignore the working class. They'll ignore the class privileges they have, because class privilege is not white privilege. They'll ignore the circumstances that the environment benefits whites only, because they'll utilize the slave purchase of any black or brown person who kisses their ass. What counter do they have to that other than you're just jealous? You're just broke. They'll tell you too, I have a black friend. So I hope you didn't really think I was a racist. Because they'll use even the black skin color as a token and currency of social means. You are socially being sold off from each person to the next.
Occupying these places, freeing them up, isn't going to solve our housing crisis, but you know what would? How about we kick the squatters out of the public housing units we have in New York City? We've got hundreds of people living for free in public housing units, while the current wait list is closed to new applications from the general public, and it looks like there are 200,000 people who are trying to get a home in New York.
That's how many people they've exploited. That's how many people they've thrown into homelessness. Because these people are seen as not human, even if they work a job, because the job is now not a real job. Because now this is funny to them, instead of seeing it as a crisis that there are 200,000 people without a house. They don't see this as capitalism failing. They see it as socialism failing, because they have socialism for the rich. And when you have socialism for the rich, which you have in capitalism, white ethno-state capitalism, it's called nationalist socialism, which is called Nazism. Because the nation of which protects a white ethno-state, the socialism protects the white class, which is the rich class, and then anyone below that is deservingly thrown into homelessness, to which they now suddenly critique socialism, which of course is socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the people of color. You address this, they'll come out for your life. I promise you that you'll be one of the homeless soon. They'll slander you, they'll defame you, they'll look for any blackmail against you and threaten you to watch your mouth, boy. They'll tell you that you're advocating for a system that only benefits the poor, which is going to be the black and brown, which is socialism in their eyes. Now suddenly it's communism. Because they can't say the N-word, they can't call us what they really want to say. They'll utilize this as a means of which the system's failing, but not see the system of which is failing is capitalism. Suddenly it's communism when it's black and brown. Suddenly it's communism when people go homeless. They don't take accountability. They're unaccountable. That's how they run this system. They purchase their slaves, they purchase their place of which they live, and then they talk down on you with down their nose as though you are an inferior species, because your kind just must not be as equal if the equality is clearly that the white race is supreme in their eyes. It's a supremacist ideology.
Legally. Meanwhile, the city's sitting on 6,000 empty units in its public housing system right now, and it's regulating 10, 20,000 of these rent regulated apartments out of existence because nobody can fix those either. And there's no accountability from the city on this.
New York City has roughly 2.3 million rental units. About 1 million of them are rent regulated apartments. What do these apartments look like? Generally, they have been occupied for decades.
Yeah.
They usually have outdated plumbing and electrical. When the occupant moves out, they almost always need a gut renovation to modernize the apartment. It costs about $1,300 to $1,400 per apartment to pay for operating costs. So more than half of the apartments in older rent stabilized buildings don't have rents that cover operating costs.
Oh, so it costs more to run the apartment than the rent, which is allowed to be charged. What a disaster of a situation. That's why we have a housing crisis in this city, because landlords are blocked from freeing these apartments up. And if you want to build a new apartment where one doesn't exist, good luck with that. There is so much environmental review, so much red tape. Nobody can build anything here. And that's because this city is already flirting with communism and socialism. Landlords are already the enemy. And any solution to the housing crisis that would allow somebody who solves a problem to make money doing it is a problem for people who are voting for other people's money. They don't.
Again, see how you said communism? If there was communism and socialism, those lands would be property owned by the state, the government itself would own them, and they would not be blocked in using an adequate system to fix them up and rent them out, because the rent will stay in a maintained state of which they will control, to which now they cannot control the rent because when they try to, the landlord will spitefully protest by leaving it empty, which is something they can afford. You understand how they play this exploitive measure. They made something that is mandatory to life, like a house to live in, and they used it as a weapon against the working poor. This is capitalism that they're using. You cannot apply socialism or communism in a capitalist society because it immediately uses a protest system that makes it inadequate. If it was owned by the state, they would fix it up, make every single unit available to rent, and then rent it out in accordance to a long-term plan of making it profitable, which of course is going to be as long as it takes, because these are human beings that pay taxes. And if they pay taxes, they're paying their rent through the tax of which they work a job in. They're paying into the system already. And they'll be paid an adequate wage at that. Trust me when I say this is a capitalist system, because a privatized business can choose to pay you under, can choose to make you an exploited class. And if you try to turn to the landlords have the right to reject your ideology, which of course they protest by leaving it empty. If they work with the businesses and they work with the government and they utilize all of that together, then you have communism, which it'll actually be streamlined. But whenever they raise the minimum wage, it gets denied. It's unrealistic to them. Suddenly, the money of which they wouldn't gain from, which is where they would collect the rent from. Because when you raise the minimum wage, you will get your rent money and you can pay an actual wage to fix the places in accordance to their value. But then they're so greedy, they'll raise it again because they want to inflate the currency. They will threaten the currency of this nation in order to get you to give them more money. They are extorting this country. That is not communism, that is capitalism. That is white capitalism. That is white socialism for the rich. And when you say the word socialism, they use that as a trigger word to say that's your ideology that doesn't work. But they use it in capitalism for the richest class. And you can see that by how they approve the loans in which they approve tax cuts, because they give you more money back into your pocket to which you can use to exploit people with. You can hold out in these long-term, I don't want to rent them out, I don't want to renovate it. But if you were a businessman, you would always make sure those were rented out by being fixed to be rented out. And you have that in actual real estate, men that know what they're doing. They have an abundance of what they call the normal line of a standardized income. They get a Section 8 vouchers. They get an entire apartment complex of affordable housing. They create a standard line of what people would always live there in because people are always poor. 200,000, that's an abundance of demand for housing, affordable housing at that, which means you could purchase this land on a 10 or 20-year loan, which of course will be paid off in handsome amounts because it's guaranteed money every month. And then they go into the luxury market to exploit the rich, which is the actual proper way to apply real estate. When you fight for these units that take advantage of the poor and the working poor, you are just participating in white supremacy, where you want to create the class difference, which is a white class and a black and brown class, to which you can look down on as inferior, uneducated, lacking of resource people. They factor out the N-word or any other word they use for the Mexican or Latino, and any other race they apply the same template and say, why don't they mention your race? They're the real races to divide and conquer the people of color. The people that are called not white. And that's how they utilize this system to threaten the poor. But if you mention that, they call it communism. I could call myself a capitalist, utilize this system, get rich off it, and they'll still call it communism. Because they want to call you brown or black. You become successful in it, now suddenly you're a capitalist. Now suddenly you're benefiting from the system. Strange how that is, ain't it? These people want to exploit you. They want to make fun of you that you don't know the definition of these words, that you don't have free time to educate yourself in these political ideologies because you're too busy working your life away. You don't have free time to read. You don't have free time to educate yourself. You don't have free time to get degrees like they did. They're privileged. They are spoiled people. That's white supremacy and white privilege. And they'll utilize that same template to attack gay people, to attack Muslims, to attack any other ideology. Even the Jewish class gets attacked like this, which is why they're so protective of their ideology. They'll use this in order to attack any person that opposes the system of white power. And you'll see again his rhetoric continue to hit on these talking points that sound like if you replace socialism and communism with these black people, with these homeless black people, with these impoverished black people which are not using their rights the right way, with these brown people who aren't working real jobs like us white men, which you replace capitalists with white men, suddenly you see exactly what they're saying, and you can use that without being racist because it's part of the wealth disparity.
Don't want that. They don't want another millionaire. They certainly don't want somebody to come along, rent something to somebody else, and make money doing it. And that's what this is all about.
More. I want to bring in American Real Estate Association co-founder Jason Haber. You know what, Jason? Let's talk about this because Ken Griffin pays over $850,000 per year in real estate taxes alone every year, not to mention the $16 million that you pay on transfer and mansion taxes because we have a flip tax.
$850,000. Let's say it's 50% taxes. He's making $850,000 a year, and they're acting like he's being robbed, like he's making $30K and they charged him $850K. $850K a year he makes if we even take half of his income. How is that robbery? Hey, look at his smug face, as if this is the truth that liberates the white man, that'll liberate all Americans and all people across the world. It's an exploitative ideology. Poor you and poor you, the rich white. If you mention the white, they'll call it real racism, which I dare them to say. Bring it on. Because I'm ready to fight with every single person and debate every single white supremacist that thinks they have a supremacy ideology that can surpass the equality of which we are given. To which they can tell us that we are the ones that are entitled, but we are the ones that are in the impoverished working the jobs that if we stop working, not only will it kill off our race and our people, their economy will tank and plummet, and they will have to capitulate to us. We can't afford that, because we'll go homeless. We're under the threat of death. They'll call us criminals when we try to steal food. They'll call us criminals for going homeless. They'll call us criminals just for asking for some income that is adequate to be able to live in the circumstance at which they practice. Because their practice is exploitative. It is a white supremacist ideology. And they act like they're being robbed. $850K in taxes. If that was 50%, $850K a year does not mean he is being robbed. It does not mean he is poor. You can put down payments on several properties with that wage. And that $850K, he has the audacity to tell people like us that they couldn't afford a couple thousand renovation for an apartment that they can immediately make profits of before the end of that year. It's a genocide of people of color. It's a genocide of anyone who is not white. And it utilizes their favorite tokens to talk about this, to which he makes money because he knows if he talks about inequality, he'll just get made fun of because he sides with the white man. He sides with the white race. He doesn't have to work hard. He just talks down on black and brown people. He rephrases black and brown as not real jobs, or people who don't work hard enough, or people who don't have degrees. And if they have the degree, they're DEI. They're suddenly unqualified. They get paid less wages than everyone else, and then anyone who gets paid more is grateful that their master gave them a way out of the trenches. And now they're grateful they're not impoverished, because at least their kids get to eat, at least their wife gets to eat, at least their family's good. They'll sell you this idea of victimhood, that you are a victim for being a slave that got favorited, that you're a victim for a white man for being rich for only making $850K a year. And they'll utilize that in order to victimize themselves, which the victimhood currency only works for the white man. The black and brown get told to shut up with that noise. Quit your yapping. Yap, yap, yap. Always complaining. You people. You people. And then they'll utilize that phrase as if that's something you can cash out on, victimhood. Meanwhile, you go homeless, you go poor. And then you gotta depend on a bunch of rich white people telling you that, don't worry, we'll fix this for you by giving more money to the white liberal working class. and everyone ignores the black and brown.
We call it here in New York City.
Yeah, well, let's look at that building for a second. That building was built with good paying jobs, union jobs, construction jobs. If you impose the pied-à-terre taxes, you've disincentivized the market. You're going to lose those jobs. You're going to hurt the union workers, the construction workers of this city.
Why does...
Yeah, right. Why is nobody thinking about that? Why does nobody seem to understand that if you're going to punish people who do things at any level, you're punishing that entire system. You're punishing the entire housing market. Where are these unionized workers who we're told we should all aspire to have more of? Where are they going to go get work if their jobs are shut down? That's what you're doing here. You're shutting down jobs. And they're talking about the owner of the penthouse that the mayor demonized in his tax day pitch to raise taxes. This guy pays almost $1 million a year in property taxes that all go to the city, and he doesn't even live here. He doesn't use any of that money. He doesn't get any of it back. Yet we're told these people pay nothing. We're told these people aren't part of our city. They have no right to anything that they own here. It's repulsive. It's wrong. It's contributing to unaffordability. This is literally what happens when you bite the hand that feeds.
You see what he said? That he said it himself. He said it himself. You bite the hand that feeds you. You make the master mad. He will rob you of your job, boy. He'll put you back out there in homelessness, boy. You don't like slavery? Don't worry. You can just die. You can rot out there like the dark man you are, because you sure as hell ain't white. $850K in taxes. How dare you, you men of color, you people of dirt, you swine. They see us as dogs to the empire. Nothing but to serve, just to hand out our best stock and workhorse so that they can get leverage against us and say that this man has more than you because he obeys the master. A white supremacist talking down on you, saying, if you don't give us our money, boy, you ain't gonna have a job. They speak down on us as though we are nothing but cattle for the slaughter, a thing to eat, a thing to throw away. And if you dare tax them, if you dare go against their white supremacist Führer, which is the capitalist leader of their white supremacist orgs, they'll tell you that you are ruining their ideas of helping people. They ain't helping no one. They ain't helping a damn thing. They're helping themselves before they ever think about anyone else, and when they build something, they're thinking about helping themselves again. It is capitalism that they are selling you, which is socialism for the rich and individualism for the poor. What job do they have to give you? They want to make more money. That's the only reason they gave you a job. They ain't giving you a job because they love you. They ain't giving you a job because they have to. They're giving you a job because they want to make themselves money. If they can't make enough money, because they will make money, not enough money because they're greedy, they'll tell you that you cost them profit. And they'll still be making that profit. Millionaires getting more sympathy than the working class because they sell you the idea that one day this could be you a rich man, that one day this could be you owning millions and millions of dollars. Just look at this token here, look at this Uncle Tom, this one made it out. That's a good boy, ain't it? That's a good boy. And then suddenly if you complain, you go out there and die, boy. You ain't a human to them. You ain't even livestock worth harvesting. You'll die out there. We'll let you rot and feed the soil with your blood, and you'll die a homeless dog to the society that you thought would actually care for you. In what world do you think these men are equal to us? They are the supremacists of our society. Bite the hand that feeds you. How dare you speak to the working class, which is black and brown, more than any of you entitled white men at the top, with your slaves that kiss your ass to get more wages because they're scared to fight back against a society that impoverishes the people of color because you are not white in their eyes, and they'll utilize that again to divide and conquer, and they'll get the richest white men on top to look down on your race, look down on your culture, and laugh at you from the high rises of which they built themselves in their eyes, but they hired a bunch of black and brown desperate slaves to build it up for them. And anyone you support, any single person you support that gets you out will get a slander and defamation campaign to make them look ridiculous while their white men look like supreme leaders in powdered wigs and quiff pens, but it's now modernized with the suit of white supremacy because it's no longer a suit that makes you different. It is the status of a real estate, the status of making more money in their bank because intelligence now adequates to how much slaves they own, how many people they can manipulate and turn against each other in this society. Exploitative measures, hatred in their hearts. I promise you that.
Sadly, the mayor is destroying, all caps, New York. It has no chance. The U.S. Should not contribute to its failure. It's only going to get worse. Tax policies are so wrong. People are fleeing. They must change their ways and fast.
Yep.
History has proven this stuff doesn't work. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
I know, it
President
has.
BJT, who by themselves is a real estate developer, first and foremost, and a New Yorker, Jason.
That's right. And listen, this tax, if you think this won't have an impact, let me tell you, we're already seeing an impact. On top of the many hats that I wear, I'm the president of a group called NIRAC. It's top performing agents here in New York City. My members are already reporting that buyers who are out there who are looking around the $5 million level, they're now looking less. They're now looking under $5 million. Now, why would they do that? Because the argument is, well, it's a small tax. But you know what? Unlike the mansion tax, it's a recurring tax. You buy an apartment in New York City for $5 million. The mansion tax is $112,000. Let's say this is an annual tax of around between $25,000 and $35,000. Guess what? After 5 years, you've more than doubled the mansion tax.
Wow. So there's no reason to buy New York City real estate anymore at these high price points if indeed this thing happens to pass, because every single year you got to pay the tax. Every single year. That means a place that's worth $5 million is going to get hammered, and something that's worth $4,900,000 is going to get away completely unscathed. After a year, one of them has lost more money than the other. Like, this is crazy. You're destroying property value. And then after all the property values here get destroyed, do you think your home that's worth less than $5 million is going to be safe? Think again. This is how all taxes start out. They start out, they're only for the people at the top. They're not for you. Oh no. And then when they don't work, or when they do work, regardless, they always get expanded. They always come down, and then everybody ends up paying for it. Everybody pays property taxes in this city now. Everybody.
Remember what I said earlier, where they'll inflate your wages and then their renters will increase their cost, of which they'll do. This is what he's literally referencing right now. He is referencing the fact that one day they will raise your wages, raise your rent in order to exploit you for being a brown or black person, in order to get more money out of it to make up for the 50% tax, to which they are then going to go and create the class system, which is the race system, which is whites only, to put the richest people at the top again, because they don't like being close to you, people of color. They hate it when black and brown people move into rich neighborhoods, so they try to create a class system. It's a caste system. The most beautiful and great looking people and the most dumb people that can do anything the white master tells them to get to the top, and they'll use that as a buffer between them and the white men, and then you'll be critiquing in their eyes, look at this black person, look at this brown person, look at this ugly person. We have every single token we got. We purchased them from the slave market for this reason. And that's how they'll utilize their ideology of exploiting the working class, which is white, black, and brown, because they do have white class they throw to the bottom. They're usually seen as the ugly. They're usually seen as the ghetto, trashy, white trash. They are the ones they are going to exploit. And then anyone at the top levels of society, they're going to say need more money because they're already rich, but they want to be even more rich to make up for the taxes. To which inflates it, because that's the threat. If you take their money, they will threaten you by taking your money back in return. And they'll push you out their neighborhoods, they'll push you out of any place that you're not welcome, and they'll create segregated ideologies of which you are going to partake in, because it's the only place that makes sense when they talk about the white man. Because you could talk about the white man, but it simply is not white. You talk about token, but they'll say that's anti-white racist, or you're just a racist addressing the system, of which is a caste system that puts you down to the bottom. He openly confesses the white supremacist ideology. He confesses that it'll fall down onto you, because if you don't do what the rich white man says, they'll threaten you and make you more poor, so you suffer what they suffer, because this is what you did to me, you deserve this, you're asking for it. And this is their ideology of oppression that they push. And you think those people have what's best for you? You think that those people are the ones that love you and care for you? They will threaten you with this nonsense, which is just them openly saying they're the victims for being rich, but not rich enough because they want to be even more rich. And they say it's your fault, so they'll make you more poor until the currency inflates to such a degree that it's worthless to everyone that's at the bottom rank, and the rich are still rich as they have ever been. He even said it. How long before this is you? I don't know. How long will it take me to make 5 million? Probably a couple of lifetimes. At this rate, they're trying to sell you nonsense, a fallacy, a fantasy. Something that as if you can escape, but you need a master to escape. You need someone to purchase you. You need someone to give to you. They ain't trying to do what's best for your interest. They'll screw over the white man too. Fittest will survive. Darwinism. You have some 5 million, 100,000, 5 million men who have $5 million each, 100,000. Then you see which one's sympathetic. You exploit them and you cut them out any deals. You push them down so they start getting poorer and poorer. They start buying the bullshit. They start buying the lies they have sold. See how they made me poor? See how they took all my money? And now they start to sympathize with the poor. That's the old school way of saying N-word lover, which now has been modernized to an exploiter of the capitalist system who's now a communist in their eyes. This is what you get for siding with communists, boy. And you skin is white as snow. They'll tell you you are nothing but a communist, liberal supremacist. Because all they want to do is otherize you from the white supremacists, which is the white man who exploits to get to the top, who exploit their working classes, who exploit their renters, who exploit their government and their nation. And they'll tell you that's a genius thing they do. Know your place, boy. That's what they want to tell you. Know your place. Who do you think you are? Equal to me? That's what they want you to think whenever you see a rich white man and a token they purchase to get to the top as well. And that token knows how to play this game too. I promise you that. They are the exploiters of our nation.
Everybody's got an income tax in this country now. This is where it's headed. This is a slippery slope, and we're on it, and we're sliding down it fast.
A real tax burden on a recurring basis to buyers. And look, I'm a New York maximalist. I want everyone investing here, living here, and enjoying this amazing city. But if you put up roadblocks and speed bumps in the purchase process, buyers at some point will go pencils down and will reconsider.
That means the values of real estate are going to go down in general.
That's
and you know, one of the things about this mayor, he keeps talking about affordable housing. He ran on it. He wants to get all this new affordable housing built. But even President Trump in the past has noted that's not possible because of the strict regulations and the tax structure of New York City.
Right,
but
you're not allowed.
More so it's the regulations.
Yeah, well, we need to add supply in this city in a major way. And until we do that, we're going to have lots of problems.
Right, but we don't want to do that. We don't want to build more apartments in this city. We don't want to expand the housing supply. And the reason for that is because the government can't build anything. And if they can't build anything and come along and be the savior, if they're sitting on 6,000 empty apartments right now, they can't even build, how is the government going to come along and save the city? It can't. And it's certainly not going to let private industry do that. It's certainly not going to let a bunch of millionaires come in here and spend their money to build buildings that tank rents because new buildings add supply, which means that landlords that have buildings right now have to lower their prices because now there's better buildings that cost less. They don't believe in supply and demand. And this means our new mayor's got a big problem. He doesn't believe in market economics at all. He's now between a rock and a hard place. He keeps talking about affordability, yet his only solution to affordability is to make life less affordable and to hurt people's jobs and to hurt the economy, which means affordability here is going to keep going in the wrong direction. In fact, it's only going to happen worse than it was before he got elected.
Well, the self-described Democratic Socialist mayor says he believes that socialism can, quote, flourish anywhere, while reflecting on his first 100 days and his, obviously, the campaign promises.
Name a place.
A lot of these have gone untouched. Here's what he hasn't been able to do. The pledge to freeze rent, give the free buses out there. He's not getting any of this
Well,
done.
let's see. The Rent Guidelines Board is voting in June on the rent freeze for rent-stabilized apartments. That'll impact 1 million apartments, 2.5 million New Yorkers.
This is awesome.
Wow. So remember that lousy apartment we saw earlier that really needs a lot of help? Well, they're about to vote to freeze the rent for those apartments, which means even more places like that are just going to come off the market. Every single time somebody moves out of a place like that, it's going to be put in a dustbin somewhere and it's just going to sit in its current state because nobody's going to be able to put up the money to renovate one of those places. It's going to take you 50 years to get your investment back, and that's just not something that people do. You got to understand that real estate's an investment at every price point, whether you're a landlord that's got an apartment that could be rented out to somebody like a 1-bedroom, a studio, a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, whatever, or if you're buying something that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. These are all investments. And if you take away the opportunity to work on those investments, there go all the jobs connected with that. If you get rid of these luxury apartments, what are you going to do for all the doormen, for all the superintendents, for all the people who maintain these places, all the plumbers, all the electricians that build them and keep them running? Those people now have less work, and it's the same thing with these rent-stabilized apartments. We're literally putting people out of work and taking housing off the market and taking away opportunity at a time when the city needs it most. If you want people to stay in New York, they'll do it even if there are taxes, if you've got opportunities here that can't be found anywhere else in the entire country. But that's becoming less and less of a thing. There's now less opportunity than there is here in other parts of the country. And that's why you've got people that are leaving and that don't want to stay and that don't want to stick around for any of this. What do you think?
This video shows
Again, they don't want to stick around because they're seen as black or brown people getting moved out. They don't want white people near the black and brown because they're seen as communist socialists because they always call them third worlders. And this is why the ideology continues. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm going to be covering more white supremacy and these ideologies because white supremacy is not only back, it's always been here, but it's evolved to a level of which there are more tokens and more slave purchased people than there are human beings who understand this system.